On June 11, 1962, three men did the impossible. They escaped from Alcatraz, the most secure prison in America. Using nothing but spoons, raincoats, and sheer determination, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers vanished into the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. But here's the question that haunts investigators, even today. Did they actually survive? Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary wasn't just any prison. It was built to hold America's most dangerous criminals, the ones who had already escaped from other facilities. Surrounded by the icy, shark-infested waters of San Francisco Bay, with armed guards patrolling every corner, it was considered escape-proof. In its 29 years of operation, no one had ever successfully escaped, and lived to tell about it. But three inmates, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, refused to accept that. What they pulled off would become the most elaborate and daring prison escape in American history. This is the story of how they spent over a year planning, digging through concrete with stolen spoons, building a raft from raincoats, and fooling guards with fake heads made from soap and human hair. Let me paint you a picture of just how impossible escaping Alcatraz really was. The prison sat on a rocky island, 1.5 miles from San Francisco. The water temperature hovered around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause hypothermia in minutes. The currents were so strong and unpredictable that even experienced swimmers struggled. Inside the prison, security was suffocating. Guards conducted head counts multiple times per day. Metal detectors screened every inch. The cells were tiny, just 5 feet by 9 feet, with solid steel bars. Every tool, every piece of equipment was accounted for. The prison housed 336 of America's most hardened criminals, including Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Frank Morris wasn't your average criminal. He had an IQ of 133, near genius level. By age 13, he'd already been arrested for his first crime. By the time he arrived at Alcatraz in 1960, he'd escaped from multiple prisons before. The authorities thought Alcatraz would finally hold him. They were wrong. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, were bank robbers from Florida with their own history of escape attempts. When they arrived at Alcatraz in 1960 and 1961, fate placed them in cells close to Morris. And that's when the planning began. The breakthrough came when Morris noticed something crucial. The walls around the ventilation grates in their cells weren't made of reinforced steel. They were concrete, old, deteriorating concrete that had been weakened by the salty ocean air for decades. Morris shared this discovery with the Anglin brothers and another inmate, Alan West, whose cell was also positioned perfectly. They realized that if they could dig through the concrete around these vents, they could access the utility corridor behind their cells, a 3-foot-wide space that ran the length of the cell block. But how do you dig through concrete when every tool is monitored? This is where their genius showed. During music hour in the recreation yard, they noticed that the noise from instruments drowned out other sounds. Inmates were allowed to paint, so they volunteered for art classes and jobs in the maintenance shop. From the workshop, they stole small saw blades and spoons. From the art supplies, they took paint. Every night after lights out, they would take turns digging around the vent grates in their cells. The scraping and chipping sounds were masked by the ambient noise of the prison. Clanging pipes, slamming doors, and most importantly, Morris's accordion playing. He'd purposely play loud music to cover the digging sounds from nearby cells. The work was painstakingly slow. Imagine scraping concrete with a spoon, bit by bit, night after night, for over a year. They had to be absolutely silent. One mistake, one guard hearing the wrong sound, and it would all be over. To hide their work during daily inspections, they crafted fake ventilation grates from cardboard and painted them to match the real ones perfectly. Second, the raft and life preservers. To survive the freezing bay waters, they needed flotation devices. Alcatraz issued raincoats to inmates, so over many months, they stole over 50 raincoats. Late at night in the utility corridor, they used steam pipes to heat seal and glue the raincoats together, creating a raft and makeshift life vests. They even fashioned a crude wooden paddle. Third, the escape route. From the utility corridor, they climbed up pipes to access the cell block roof. They loosened a ventilation shaft cover at the top. This would be their final exit point. But here's where the plan nearly fell apart multiple times. Guards occasionally inspected the utility corridors. The escapees had to time their work perfectly, leaving no trace behind. They also had to coordinate with Alan West, the fourth member of the team, whose cell was further away. During this entire time, over 18 months, they lived double lives. By day they were model prisoners, following every rule, avoiding suspicion. By night they were architects of the impossible. June 11th, 1962. After months of preparation, everything was ready. The weather forecast predicted fog, perfect cover for their escape across the bay. Around 10:00 p.m., after final bed check, Morris and the Anglin brothers placed their dummy heads on their pillows, arranged blankets to look like sleeping bodies, and squeezed through the holes they dug in their cell walls. They climbed into the utility corridor and made their way up the pipes to the roof. Alan West, the fourth man, had a devastating problem. He'd fallen behind on digging his hole, and when the night came, he couldn't break through the final layer of concrete. He frantically tried to widen his opening, but the noise was too risky. Morris and the Anglins waited as long as they dared, but they couldn't delay forever. They made the heartbreaking decision to leave without him. West would remain behind, becoming the key witness who later revealed the entire plan to authorities. Morris and the Anglins reached the roof and removed the ventilation fan they'd previously loosened. They climbed down 50 feet of piping to the ground, then scaled two 12-foot barbed wire fences. At the northeast shore of the island, they inflated their makeshift raft and life vests using a homemade accordion-style pump. Just after midnight, they entered the freezing black waters of San Francisco Bay. The currents were treacherous, the fog was thick, and the water temperature was a bone-chilling 50 degrees. They paddled into the darkness, aiming for Angel Island or the Marin shoreline, about 2 miles away. And then, they vanished. The next morning at 7 a.m., guards discovered the dummy heads during routine inspection. Alcatraz went into immediate lockdown. The FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in American history. Within hours, search teams scoured the bay. They found pieces of the Raincoat raft floating near Angel Island. They discovered a paddle. Personal belongings were found on a nearby shore. But no bodies. No survivors. No trace of Morris or the Anglins. The official FBI conclusion? They drowned. The water was too cold, the currents too strong, the distance too far. The Bureau declared them dead and closed the case in 1979. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Evidence emerged over the decades that suggested they might have survived. In 2013, the San Francisco Police Department received a letter, allegedly written by John Anglin, claiming all 3 men survived. Morris died in 2008. And he and his brother were still alive. Handwriting analysis was inconclusive. A 2015 History Channel investigation used advanced computer modeling to analyze the tides and currents that night. Their conclusion? If the men entered the water between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, the currents would have actually pushed them towards shore. They could have made it. Family members of the Anglins have reported receiving Christmas cards with hidden messages for years after the escape. A photograph emerged in 2015, allegedly showing John and Clarence Anglin in Brazil in 1975. The U.S. Marshals Service still considers the case open. To this day, Morris and the Anglins remain on their wanted list. If they survived, they would be in their 90s now. The 1962 Alcatraz escape remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. 3 men, armed with nothing but spoons, stolen raincoats, and brilliant planning, accomplished what was supposed to be impossible. They fooled guards with fake heads made from soap, dug through concrete for over a year, built a raft by hand, and vanished into the San Francisco Bay. Did Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin die in those freezing waters, as the FBI concluded? Or did they pull off the perfect escape, living out their lives in freedom, always looking over their shoulders? Alcatraz closed permanently in 1963, just 1 year after the escape. The cost of maintaining the deteriorating facility was too high, but many believe the embarrassment of the successful escape played a role in the decision. Today, Alcatraz stands as a tourist attraction, visited by over 1 million people each year. Tour guides still tell the story of Cell Block B, where 3 ordinary men became legends. Their cells remain preserved exactly as they were found that morning. Empty beds, dummy heads still resting on pillows, and holes in the walls leading to freedom. The truth of what happened that foggy night in June 1962 may never be known. But one thing is certain: Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers proved that even the most impossible prison could be escaped, with enough determination, intelligence, and courage. What do you think? Did they make it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more incredible true crime escapes. Thanks for watching.